Cast or an Njoycast special if you follow the title up at the top of the screen. Phantom Playin' because I'm clever with words.
Phantom Plane. I thought you were gonna go with like PLAIN, like Phantom Plane, fucking dull ass.
It is a very boring
Shit.
game. That's why we decided to do a whole special like.
That would be perfect if I hated the game. That would be perfect for the
Mhm.
review. And then everyone else would roll their eyes at me, but I would know I got them.
Now there will be spoilers, so that's why it says spoilers in the title. And if this audio warning and the title warning slips past you, then that's on you. It's not on us.
Yeah. Basically, talking about Phantom Pain on just our podcast wasn't enough. Apparently, we had to go deeper.
Yeah, because there was so much I wanted to talk about yesterday that like one kind of like spoilery thing because it was just too hilarious not to mention, and we'll probably get back into that again. But yeah, I've been dying to talk about this game without having to worry about what I say about it.
Yeah, and great thing at work is that like only one other person I work with is actually playing the game, and like only me and him can like talk about it, and everyone else like who is remotely interested in video games either hasn't played it yet or they don't care. And so it's like they have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm like, "Oh, this thing in the intro was so fucking funny and it was so awesome." And
Well, and that's the my coworker. I guarantee will not play the game. Um, and just you, we both started it at the same time. I have a feeling that you will quickly like outpace me in the game.
fucking maybe if I
I guess the only
depends how
difference
many
is like
9-hour shifts they're gonna hand me.
I'll call him up and be like, "Keep this kid at work so I can keep up with him." But
That's a good approach to video game cover.
I guess the other thing though
One of
is
my writers bogged down.
you're more. Turn on another light here because
Whoa.
professional went out. I'm blind. Um, you're a little bit more like worried, I think, about doing it well, like searching for the commander or whatever. And I think I'm
Yeah.
more like, geez, just get me in and out alive. That's good enough.
I'm that way on the first mission. You kind of they set you up to play it that way because it's all story wise really urgent
Right.
to rescue. Like the when you I guess we're going to go a little out of order. Like the intro sequence is you escaping the hospital after the events of Ground Zeroes.
And it's just as boring. I mean, you're basically just lying on your exit paperwork and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you need to check out, and
Right.
nurse is a real bitch to you, and it's unpleasant. But then you get out into the game, um, and then you have to go rescue your friend who was involved in what happened in Ground Zeroes, and you have to go save him. He's a prisoner in Afghanistan. So Revolver Ocelot, who's even before I liked this game and had now some personal investment in the series, Revolver Ocelot is a fucking great character, and I hope they keep him great in this one. I'm not far enough to see it, but he's always been like my favorite Metal Gear character.
See, I've only played. We talked about it on the show. I've only played the first Metal Gear Solid, which is in the same like timeline, but it's actually way ahead of all this other stuff that's been going on. And was he the like one that kept contacting you in that game? Like, is he your um,
Um,
boss basically? Thought I remembered him being like an enemy in that game, but
Revolver Ocelot was he first shows. I mean, chronologically, Metal Gear Solid 3 is the first in the series, and he shows up there, and he's now Venom Snake, at the time Naked Snake, and now Big Boss. He was an enemy to him. He was working with the Russians, and he was one of the main generals. And it developed this kind of like throughout that game, the whole one of the side stories playing out was this like kind of rivalry but respect sort of growing between Snake and Ocelot. And like, because it's like Snake who tells him like, originally like you should be using a revolver. The way you shoot the gun, it lends itself to that. You're flashy and like you'll catch people off guard with that and stuff. And it's really interesting because you like it doesn't really show when you first start playing MGS3, but you're playing as a guy he knows his shit already. Like he's been trained by the original boss, and so he's really able to just school people on that type of shit. Revolver Ocelot then sort of becomes a character who becomes really hard to follow, and he's part of the reason why I don't understand the entire timeline of MGS, because after MGS3, they kind of have their one final little duel, and that's a pretty interesting scene, actually. Not enough to recommend me to say go play it, because it's still MGS3, and I don't really like that game, but enough to maybe watch a Let's Play or something. And then they kind of develop a sort of relationship where it's friendly, and they kind of work together at times. But Ocelot, I don't think ever like fully joins up with Snake's army until what we're seeing now in Phantom Pain, where he's on Mother Base with you and helping you out. And then that's when kind of shit gets crazy, and then Metal Gear Solid starts to happen, and he becomes like the main torturer guy of like for like Liquid Snake's group of people, and you're trying to stop him, and he kind of fully goes into like full-blown villain mode in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. But then it gets kind of weird again, where it's like like by the time you hit 4, you have no idea really what the fuck is going on with it.
That's what, because he must be the one I was reading about some of the characters yesterday, and like I said, I played the first one, but I played the first one when the first one was current, so that's been forever ago.
Well, he gets like in MGS1, he gets his arm cut off by the fucking ninja.
But he has his arm cut off. Oh no, we're talking Revolver. See, now I'm thinking Kaz.
Yeah. But Ocelot gets his arm cut off.
So everybody, I mean, this whole series is really about losing limbs. Like that's the overall moral to the
yeah, now him and Big Boss can fully relate.
Yeah.
Miller, honestly, like it's surprising like how interesting of a character he turned out to be. Because in MGS1, you talk to Miller like he's one of your advice support guys, Solid Snake support guys. And then you realize he's been dead the whole time. And like Liquid Snake has just been impersonating him and only giving you sort of very vague temporary advice and not really giving you anything concrete.
Right.
And so he was always kind of this weird throwaway character of like, just sort of this added like motivation for Solid Snake to be like, oh, you killed the master or whatever, fucking, because I guess you always need that plot line. But now he's like this really like hell-bent, determined, kind of fixated on revenge, but also like very understandably like kind of desperate and like idealistic for like this group of soldiers. And it's one of the things that makes Phantom Pain really powerful early on is like when you do rescue him and he's talking to you and he's like, we're gonna like, they fucking took everything from us. They blew up our entire way of life because it's just an island of mercenaries.
Right.
And it's all they know how to do. And he's like, we're gonna fucking build it again and we're going to stop them. And you want to be loyal to that guy. Like it's weird because everybody treats Big Boss in that game. They come up to you on your Mother Base and they salute you and stuff. But, he's kind of this natural born leader. And you can kind of see where he would like, if taken further, he would have that relationship with Solid Snake, in the later games.
What's interesting to me at this point, in this first episode here, we'll go up to, there's the prologue, which a joke about being born, getting out of the hospital. It was actually one of the best intros to a video game that I've ever played. And then the first like mission. So me and Ben are both at the same point here. What was interesting to me is when you rescue Kaz, which we'll probably talking about this completely backwards, but that was the point of the first mission, was to go. He had been captured, and you go rescue him. And like you said, when he's talking, you can really hear that desperation and this desire to rebuild what they have. What's interesting to me is, at least at this point, I can't tell if it's 100% revenge, or not necessarily 100, but if he's really being driven by revenge, like he's pissed and he really just wants revenge, although he does basically say that. But at the same time, he came across to me almost as just like he needs that identity, he needs that power. Like he right now he's lost and doesn't know who he is, because everything, like you said, everything was taken away from him.
But this game like has kind of an interesting idea of revenge, where it's not revenge usually turns into this very black and white thing in stories, where it's like well, yeah, you got your revenge, but it made a monster out of you or something. And this seems like it's going in a little more gray, where it's like revenge is the goal, but it's revenge in the sense of like, these people have proven that as long as we're around, they're going to try to stop us from doing what we need to do, what we need to be.
And that's the other thing. It's interesting because he literally calls it revenge, but they're actively being hunted down by Cypher, I assume. That's what we're being led to assume at this point anyway. I know Metal Gear, so that could very well veer off to become something else. But although at this point, from the little I've seen of Cypher, and it's probably the coolest part of the game, but also the like, well, fuck, how about I just get a little shack in the middle of the Amazon and hide? Because first the game starts off, you wake up from your coma, and you could tell there's some excitement surrounding it. Well, obviously there was some kind of mole, or they had found you. The real action, like the control starts off with a super soldier woman like coming in and trying to assassinate you, and she didn't seem to have any like real super like natural superpowers, but you could tell she was a very highly trained soldier. But some did they flat out reveal that was see, I'm already getting all the names. Was that Revolver Ocelot that saved you in the hospital, or have they not said yet? Like, because the guy's face was all wrapped up the whole time, but I kind of got the impression it was him.
Yeah, I think the idea was that, and that's another interesting thing about him too, because as the series goes on, one of his main abilities is, well, one of his talents in the world of war is that he's an expert torturer. And so in one of the audio logs, I listened to all the audio logs that were available so far, which before this game I would have never done. Like, I hated the codec stuff. I hated just the amount of fucking bullshit exposition they throw on you. And now I'm like really interested, because accessing all that stuff is really easy with these menus.
And it's cool. I didn't realize I did the same thing, and it's unusual for me as well. But I did that like in the beginning or middle of the first mission, so I only had like 8 audio logs at that point. But they average about 1.5 to 2 minutes each, so that's about 15 minutes of audio. And I sat there and was just like sitting there listening to them. I didn't realize you can queue them up and you can go about your business and it'll play.
Yeah, but I knew that about halfway through playing them, but I still just sort of sat back and just listened, because I was like genuinely curious, because now like it feels like, all right, now I have a reason to be invested because I'm having fun playing the game. But so Ocelot, he develops into a really good torturer. He actually, if I recall, he kind of starts out that way. At this time with the Soviets, but one of the things he's doing is keeping an eye on Snake in the hospital. Snake is in a 9-year coma and just coming out of it when the game starts. And he's keeping an eye on Snake in the hospital while also, doing these sort of ugly fucking, interrogation jobs and stuff, like to, kind of figure out what, where is Cypher? How close are they getting to him? And like just trying to, stay more informed than the opposition. And that's really interesting that like they didn't just, it wasn't just some fucking guy who happened to be in the bed next to him, like, oh, and he's magically Ocelot. It's like, no, this was all part of, Miller's plan of like, we got to keep him fucking alive because we need him.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's really like, and you start talking about this and you start getting all this information, and it's really gritty and serious. And then you remember that the intro, you're riding away from a flaming unicorn.
Favorite thing ever. Like, that's why
Fucking
I was doing a fake like live review system, and I know we talked about this yesterday, but for the people listening now, where as I was playing the game, I would tweet like, "Oh, this good thing happened, +1. Now we're at 10 out of 10, or -1, 9 out of 10." Going. And then there's this part that hits, where like Ben said, you've just escaped the hospital, but you're still being chased, and your vehicle crashes, and you get out, and you're like, for a second, you almost think, okay, like I've lost him, and then this attack helicopter comes over the horizon, and you're like, well, fuck, I'm like half dead on foot, and here's an attack helicopter, and then a giant flying whale appears and eats the helicopter.
Yeah.
It explodes into like nothing but a giant sky of fire, and a flaming flying unicorn with a guy on top comes out. And by this point, I'm looking at this like, I don't know what I'm watching, but I like it. Like,
yeah. And Ocelot comes, saves you like a fucking cowboy.
Of course.
And you fucking hop on the horse, and that entire time it was so action packed and so intense that it wasn't until after all that I realized, like, that is fucking crazy. That is
Right.
that is fucking Kojima as shit.
But that's what I was getting to when I said with Cypher is like, I want to just already go hide in the Amazon, because throughout the hospital you have a military force trying to kill you, but then there's also there's that woman that seems to be separate from that military. Maybe she was with them. It never really talks about it because you're just trying to live. But there's a guy that his whole body is engulfed in fire, and anybody that shoots at him, he just like sucks up the bullets and stores that energy until he explodes them back outwards on people. So I'm sitting here, that's going to be a boss fight, and it's like, well, you can't fucking shoot him. So
yeah,
that's already coming. And then there's this little like flying masked girl that can just like make anything materialize, or she uses psychic powers. And at first I thought maybe that was because, again, I have very limited knowledge, and the first one's the only one I played. I'm like, is this like early Psycho Mantis?
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering if it's like Psycho Mantis's mom or something.
Yeah, her sister. Who knows?
Right. But so there's that, and then at the end of the first mission, there's they called them the skulls. Like when you
they're fucking creepy, man.
Yes, and
like, and that is that is something I think where like superior graphical technology, like, we kind of talked about it multiple times on our podcast about like how it doesn't really matter at this point too much, like in terms of like the level of detail you can capture, because games look pretty good and the improvements are always pretty marginal, but you couldn't do like they could do something just as memorable. But when the skulls drop down after you save Miller, you walk to the pickup point, and your chopper can't land and evacuate you, because they, like, when the skulls show up, they show up in like just a fucking haze of gas that prevents the chopper from landing, and then the fucking skulls sort of just stumble in your direction like zombies, but then they like they twitch. And like they twitch and they kind of like activate.
Yeah, their hands are like all off to the side, and they kind of
and then they're like kind of super soldiers, and it's like, and it's like the graphical technology is not what makes that cool. It's the level they can do to the like animations and stuff and get it just right to be like, that's fucking. I don't want anything to do with those guys.
What got me was when they're like, well, you need to get to the other landing zone now because we can't land here. And they're like, don't let them see you, but you're cornered. There's no at least I couldn't figure out a quick way.
I did it when I replayed the mission. I got around them without them finding me. Fucking tensest goddamn thing ever. Because you're right. There are two ways out of that corner. And And it kind of, that is one thing I don't like, and we've talked about it before. And I wrote a column about it, I think, this year, about like how I don't like open world games cutting you off arbitrarily.
Yeah.
And there's like, what's fucking frustrating about that is like the skulls are coming towards you in one direction, and then there's just an open road behind you, and you can't take it because it says like, oh, you're leaving the mission zone.
It's like, well, how about the helicopter fly over here and pick me up? Like,
the mission is rescuing this guy. I have him on my back.
Right.
Why would that be a failure? And but they start coming towards you, and you have to, like, I had to wait a long time for them to get in positions where, like, two of them are crossing a bridge, the other two are going down the other side of the bridge. One of them, like, kind of turns down around the bridge the other way, and once he's under the bridge, there's an opening that you can go the long way around outside the bridge and get up back onto the road and sneak away from him. I did not fucking call my horse the entire time walking back to the truck.
Oh, jeez, that would have made it extra tense because the second landing zone is not close.
It's not close, but I didn't want him to I didn't want to whistle and then like, oh fuck, now they know where I am.
Well, that's what's funny about it is like you said, one's coming down like under this ravine and one's coming across the bridge. And I thought, well, I can maybe go down the opposite side of the ravine and go up and like get behind the ones coming across the bridge. But you couldn't because they weren't quite to the bridge yet. So they saw me as I was coming up that embankment, but I was on my horse. And so as soon as they saw me, they come over the radio and they're like, oh, you got to lose them. And I'm like, I'm on the horse. That's fine. I'll just gallop fast. And so I'm galloping away all proud of myself, like, haha, fuckers, I'm leaving. Yeah. And then they can run a million miles an hour, and the way that they snake across the ground in like this cloud of dust, like you said, and that's they can animate that so well thanks to the technology. It's very intimidating because every time you think you're away, all of a sudden these like 4 or 5 soldiers come like streaking in front of you, take up positions, and you're like, well, crap.
You're just pulling out your fucking assault rifle, just spraying like shit. Like
I was just running. I'm taking hits, a couple hits, and just veering off as soon as they'd like try to get like behind a boulder and just running for my life.
I was in full sprint, but I was also in desperation, like, fuck, they're in front of me. And it fucking didn't hit a goddamn thing. But
that's kind of what I assumed if they were already like, because when they first see you, there's this really cool animation and it zooms in on one of them or whoever saw you. And they basically just materialize an assault rifle out of thin air. So you're like, well, these aren't normal people. Well, it was obvious to begin with, but yeah, I kind of assumed that you couldn't just like gun them down.
Yeah.
But
so we didn't really talk too much about the intro. We talked about like the horse thing and like the guys showing up or whatever, but that whole sequence of like playing, like, it starts you in first person because, you know, video games.
Right.
And you figure out you don't have an arm, and then they tease you. I think we talked about it on the show. I think you brought it up, the fucking troll of like the character creator.
That was the funniest thing. Great. I love that this doctor comes up to you, and by this point, they're like, okay, well, there's people looking for you to kill you. You're back. We're going to make it safe for you. So we need to change your identity. And a character creator pops up. And I know you mentioned yesterday you were just as surprised as me because, I mean, it's this full-fledged character creator. It's not like just this like still image of a screen. And I'm like, well, fuck, how did they keep that secret through? You know, that's one of those like huge features that they never mentioned once. And I'm like, well, good on them for keeping something this huge as a secret. But at the same time, I agree with you. I'm like, but Big Boss is such an iconic character. I don't want him to look anything.
Why the fuck did you get Kiefer Sutherland to like face mask for this character if you're gonna just give us any fucking model we want?
Right. But then at the same time, so there was a little disappointment. But then I made a really cool, kick-ass looking character, and I'm like, all right. And then so you pick a name and your birthday, like, and whatever, and the doctor's like, okay, well, if that's what you want to look like tomorrow, this is what you'll look like. And it's like, okay.
All right.
Well, then all of a sudden, this woman super soldier comes into the room, like, as the doctor's talking to you, and chokes
Fucking
out and
kills the.
kills the nurse. But the doctor doesn't seem concerned whatsoever. And then, like, she starts killing the doctor, and he's still just talking to you, like, yeah, we got to get this done. Like, he didn't really seem like he was.
He didn't notice. The idea was that she was too quiet.
Well, but
That he
even
wasn't.
like
He like.
as she's choking him, he didn't seem to be like. I mean, he was struggling, but he wasn't all of a sudden like, "Oh my gosh, somebody's trying to kill me." He was just like going about
Well, he
his
had a
business.
garrote wire around his
Yeah.
neck. I don't know what
But,
more you can do by like kick and choke on your own fucking blood.
But he didn't seem to.
Oh.
That was the thing to me. He didn't seem to physically be trying to put up much of a fight. So I almost got the.
He kicked you off the bed. Like,
Well, right, like not until like the point that he was like a final gasping death.
hey, I don't like this. You're already planning on writing a review about how people die,
Yeah.
and
No, like it just to me, it almost came across as too like normal to him, not like surprise, just like normal. Like, I know I'm gonna die. This is part of the protocol because it's all about secrecy. Like,
I don't think he knew. If there was any like lack of surprise, I don't think it was. I know I'm going to die. I think he knew that that was very fucking possible, though.
yeah,
Because he knew who Snake was, and like he knew what they were trying to do there.
right. But the
You
whole
know.
point is you go through this whole character creator thing and make a fake name, and then they never change your character. It's in there
Yeah.
like 100% as a joke,
Yeah,
and that was one of the greatest things ever too.
one of the best like developer jokes I've ever seen pulled on an audience, like on a player. It was fantastic. And then you go through this segment of just like, normally I don't have the patience for this type of shit. Like I've seen so many, and I've played so many intros where it starts you off in like a situation like this where it's like, oh, you can't really walk yet, and
Tomb Raider is a
like,
great example, the most recent one.
yeah,
I don't. You didn't play that, did you?
no,
But yeah,
Um,
you start off like I know you saw the intro because they showed it like before the game even came out, where you're strung up and you break yourself free, but you like, of course, impale your torso because Tomb Raider's like a torso impalement simulator. I think that's
Right.
what that game 100% is. But so yeah, you spend the first like half hour like limping around slowly.
yeah.
So-
And I've played a lot of games that do that, and I fucking hate it usually because it's always just like some like slow ass way to like tutorialize everything and stuff. And in this game, it feels entirely like cinematic and necessary, and it doesn't like feel bad to play. Like it feels natural. Of like
well, the thing
he
is
is coming out of a coma. Of course, this is how it's going to sort of feel right now, and like how it's going to be paced.
well, and the control didn't just arbitrarily like, oh well, we're gonna disable the left button. You can't turn left. Like the whole control scheme became weighted towards your particular disability. Like at first, you could only crawl with your arms, and then you could start to use your legs. But then the motions that you would push would kind of reflect that. And then at one point, your arm gets dislocated.
It's kind-
and,
It's kind of a great like idea in terms of like getting people like how to develop like a player's mindset really quickly to your controls is like, you know, kind of start them up off like a child. Like you start
Right.
crawling, you start walking, and then we start adding a little bit more, and this is how you sneak around, and then next thing you know, this is how you're fucking shooting on horseback and hiding on your horse.
And I noticed they did the one developer trick. I only noticed it because I've read, like studies and articles and like theses and stuff on ways to implement things like options without having just a blatant options menu. But where the doctor comes in and you're first coming to, and he's like, okay, now look up. What they're really doing is the people that like the inverted controls, if you naturally push down to look up, it'll register that and it'll automatically put you on inverted controls. Now, I'm not a huge proponent of like, oh, that's like a flawless way to seamlessly integrate it, because even if I use inverted controls and somebody tells me to look up, I'm probably going to assume they want me to push the up. But
Yeah.
the game tends to let you, and I haven't looked because I hate inverted control. People are the worst, but
All right, thank you. Fuck. My
Yeah.
brother plays with inverted
No.
controls. It
No,
fucking
yeah,
drives
so
me
does mine.
nuts.
It's dumb. I don't get it. But so I haven't looked, but I assume that like even if you pushed up, assuming that's what they want you to do, and you want it inverted, you can go to options and change it. But they did a lot of little neat stuff like that in the prologue to, just all as part of the experience. No, one thing I didn't like, we talked about this yesterday, is as you're gaining your different abilities and they're teaching you the controls. At one point, it's like hold A to crawl. So I held A to crawl. You don't hold A to crawl. You hold A for a little bit longer to go prone.
You hold it longer than a tap. Like
Right.
this is where we are with Metal Gear games. Is like there's a distinguishment between press a button and like tap a button, and goddamn, it's specific to like what's going to happen if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you
Well,
hold
then that's why when
the trigger down,
it literally worded it hold A to crawl. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And when they said that, I thought, well, this will be fucking inconvenient. But
like I like how this game plays now, but I have to say that is one thing I don't like is that like punching in combat is all like at least for me, I'm playing with a 360 controller. It's all the right trigger, and.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I liked about the other Metal Gear games was you could just hammer square and you're doing fucking jumping kicks and shit. Like,
well, and then it's like when you close quarters combat CQC. If you once you grab a guy, you can choke him out, but you have to. It's like tap the R trigger. I'm like, seriously, it does so many things that if the game wasn't so awesome, would really piss me off because anytime that one of the inputs is tap a trigger, I hate that. Triggers aren't built to be tapped.
Yeah, it doesn't feel. My only problem with that really is like it doesn't feel like you don't have a good gauge of like. All right, I'm doing the thing the game wants me to do. Like sometimes it feels like I'm tapping the trigger and I'm just like, I hope this works this time. And it's never failed, but you're never really sure that you're doing it right. And I do wish it was like a button for that. I will say I like that mechanic of like choking people out because it like if you're choking somebody out and there's another guard like right in front of you, that's really fucking tense. Where it's like oh, just go to sleep, you motherfucker. Come on.
And if my finger slips off the trigger, I don't hit it fast enough, I'm fucked. And that would be like, I don't want to say it would be like real life because obviously none of that. The guy would be kicking and you'd hear noise, but it kind of adds that real like unpredictability of a move like that, which is why I think I completed the whole first mission by just like shooting everybody in the head with my assault rifle because I suck at the stealth stuff. But that's another thing that they do really interestingly. I couldn't do it the first playthrough of the first mission because you don't have the equipment yet, but that Fulton balloon where you can extract soldiers and put them to work on your base.
Fucking best thing ever.
Well, what is really cool about it is it's a neat way to promote the stealthy, non-lethal gameplay. Because it turns enemies into resources. So if you go around like me and just gun everybody down, I'm not going to have a very well-staffed base.
Yeah, and we talked about that yesterday. Is like, I mean, there are parts of that game where it is if like you get caught, you might be fucked because there's way too many guys, and like the best you can do is like try to hide, and maybe you'll get away with it. You might not get out of that area, so. Hope your hiding spot is good. And that's
the shit too. Like I alerted some guards and was hiding under a bed. And at first everything seemed cool. It's like nobody's even coming in here. When your real worry isn't when they're in alert status, it's when they go into search mode. Afterward. And it's funny because
then they're looking,
Right. And so like I'm sitting here in this little room under a bed, like, okay, I hear footsteps, I hear more footsteps, I hear a lot of footsteps. I see 4 sets of like legs come into the room, and I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, maybe they won't look under the bed. And it's cool how they get into position, and they looked a couple other places, and then I watch as one like turns towards the bed. I'm like, uh-oh. He takes a step back and is like, I think this is gonna go bad, and then he like kneels down, and then there is that like split second, even before that reflex mode kicks in. There's that kind of a split second of Because in real life, if you looked under the bed, it's dark and you've got a flashlight. Because this was at night, it would take a second for you to realize what you're looking at, and then weep in the exclamation point, and it's like, well, fuck. And I gunned them all down. And in the early mission, you can get away with that because the two big towns in it don't have that many people. But
Yeah, there was a point last night when I was trying to get the fucking commander that I was talking about, and I got him on such a fucking fluke. Like I got to that camp, and I kept getting caught, and then like one time I got there, and I finally found him due to the red hat. And then as I was trying to work my way towards him, because the idea is you got to Fulton balloon him out of there. So as I'm trying to get to him and choke him out, I get busted, and everyone's on my shit. Like the entire goddamn outpost is like hunting me, and I run to one end of the bunker, and like I just see, because I have them all marked, so I just see just the red arrows coming towards me, and I'm just like, oh fuck. um so I completely in my head, I'm like, fuck the commander, I just need to get out of here. And I managed to sneak my way around them. They all kind of crashed my last position, and I snuck around. And then as I'm sneaking around, I'm just in full sprint. I run into a canyon. Fucking commander's waiting for me there. Starts
maybe he
trying to
doesn't like
shoot.
his pay in his current job. He's like, please take me.
No, he fucking tried to shoot me. And I just like full blown sprinted. And if you've never used like the dive to knock down enemies,
I didn't know you
fucking
could do that.
fucking great. Oh, I love it. Like it doesn't knock him out, but you can knock him down through it. And it's like like literally running full speed, like the length of a football field, and he's just trying to shoot me, and then I just fucking tackle him, and then fucking. So he's at our base now, and I believe he has like 8 broken ribs from that. But welcome
But he'll
aboard.
be a very good employee because it's like, did you get your reports done? Yes, for the love of God.
That's Big Boss. Salute him. Salute your boss, damn it.
It is interesting to me, the idea that like these soldiers are fighting against you, they're trying to kill you, but if you balloon them out and put them on an oil rig, they're just like, yeah, we'll work for you.
Well,
I
it
mean, I
must
guess
be
they don't
really
have a lot of
persuasive.
choice, but you're in the middle
Yeah,
of
I
a...
mean, yeah, you're talking about like guys like coming out of times of like the Cold War and shit, and they're like, what do they have to fight for?
That's
You know,
true.
that's the thing that makes Miller such an interesting character to me. Is like he's giving all like people from all different backgrounds. Like the thing you all have in common is that you're soldiers, and people need you to fight wars for them. So let's do it together. Um, but I was gonna say, like, there was a point when I was trying to find that commander where they were searching for me, and I went into like one of their houses. Like I shut down the power, and I went into one of their houses, and I crouched down, and I was just like right by the door. And for a while, it was what you were talking about. Like 5 people walked by without looking in, and then like 2 guys came, and I was just, oh fuck. And then like they paused, and I could see them just outside the door, and it's something I got to give Metal Gear a lot of credit for. Even the games I don't really like, is that like as much as I enjoy stealth games, nobody does that sort of same tension as well, where it's like when you have to hide. Um, it may be like some horror games like Amnesia or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like maybe they capture the same thing, but like those are horror games where you're literally helpless. This you have options, but you're in situations where it's not the best option to go fucking blast your way out.
But that's what's awesome about it is you get to these points where you're literally sitting here like, fuck, do I open fire? Because
Right.
if you do, things are going to go to hell, but you're like right on that razor's edge.
Yeah. So I'm waiting by the door. I'm like crouched down by the door. Door pops open. Guy takes like a few steps into the house. I have the like action icon to just beat the shit out of him, like, perform a knockout throw. But I know the other guy's right there. So I'm like, if I do that, I know I'm caught. And it was just this really tense thing where he's like looking in the room with the flashlight, but he doesn't move. If he took one more step, he would have saw me behind the door, and and then he turns around and leaves. And I
It's
was just like, oh my God,
I
thank you.
think the searching in this game when they're looking for you is probably more realistic than any other game I've played. Because you got to think, if you have a whole village like that and you're looking for a guy, even if they're on alert, you can't feasibly like go in. A lot of games, what they'll do, it's like the guards don't know you're there, but they do. Like whatever room you're in, they're gonna come in and automatically start looking through like the
Yeah,
lockers
like
and
the
under the bed.
AI, somewhere in the AI, they know you're there.
Right.
It's just, then it's a matter of like what random bit of code is going to decide where they look and will
Right.
they get you.
But something
Um,
like that makes sense because if they're looking in a broad area, if they didn't know you were, if they had seen that you go into the house, and they're very good about that. Like if you alerted them near the house, then they're going to search every inch of that house. But if you
right.
get away from the initial area and you hide elsewhere, the AI.
And the lights are off and stuff, and you only have that flashlight to look like. That's something that like their attention to detail on that is really amazing because like the day and night shit really matters
I know,
because
and it sucks that the cycles are so quick. 'Cause I want it to be
but
night all the fucking time.
what's great is that you can pop in a cigar and you can just wait till night if you need
Yeah.
to, and you have to get that commander objective in that first mission because he'll only come out at night. Um, but yeah, like that shit, like you said, if they didn't know I was in there, they would have checked. Well, if they knew I was in there, they would have checked every corner.
Right.
But because it's dark and I'm like right by the door, he's not really. He's just sort of a vague scan through, and that's like, it's kind of that Hollywood sort of thing, but it's a lot more understandable than it ever was before
Right.
in like a stealth game where it's like, huh, they didn't look here. Of course, I'm hiding in the locker. You know, this time it's like, yeah, like it's very believable that they missed that one corner of their vision.
And that's what makes this game so awesome, but also so stressful. Is you can hide under the bed, and maybe they won't look. Maybe they will. At least for me, at this point, especially not like I don't know if earlier games are just like iterating on the AI routines or whatever. I haven't noticed a real pattern there. There's patterns to patrol and stuff, and they're still very long and complicated. Like it's hard to sit and get down exactly where everybody will be at any given point. Um, but it's not like a game the AI thing. Like I know, well, if I do this and then hide over here, they won't look here. It's like, well, maybe they will and maybe they won't. It every time that I've been trying to hide in that game, it's been extremely stressful. Of course, me and your
Yeah.
approaches are different. You're like, oh, I had the CQC thing, like an icon up, and I was ready to beat them up. And I'm always just like, oh, they might find me. Assault rifle at the ready.
Yeah. Sniper rifle, pointed at, aim, fire. Um, yeah, I try to. There's something just like ingrained in me in stealth games where I always feel like I need to try to do it the right way, but I'm getting better at like enjoying it for like I'm enjoying my failures just as much as my successes because it still feels heroic to get out of a fucking situation that just blows up in your
Right.
face.
And that's one thing, I don't want to keep bringing other games into a Metal Gear specific show, but Splinter Cell Blacklist earlier this year. Well, I think it came out last year or even 2 years ago. But that was really the first stealthy game that I really enjoyed for the same reason, because so many stealth games, and that's why I'm loving Metal Gear. It's like, oh, you need to be silent here. Oh, you got seen, game over, restart at checkpoint. But like in a real, video game situation, you're trying to be sneaky because it's helpful. But if you got seen, it's not like an automatic fail state. I mean, it is if there's a machine gun looking right at you or something, but they will gun you down. But it gives you that opportunity to be like, man, I fucked this up, but now I have to adapt and go about it a different way.
Yeah.
And that gets me to the one thing that I think I like the most above all else, and you saw it in Ground Zeroes, and it's getting really interesting already in Phantom Pain. There's so many things, though it's just designed so well to let you. I don't even want to say approach it how you want to approach it, because if anything, that's dumbing it down too much. To put a good example to it, well, two things. One, we talked about yesterday after the show. When you come into these towns, they have radio communications like dishes. And it mentions, like, oh, if you take out those dishes, they lose communications with headquarters and they can't call in backup. So I'm like, okay, cool. So one of the first things I did when I went into that town to do the secondary objective first to gather, intel on where Kaz is, the first thing I did was make my way to the radio building. And I was just so ingrained with video games that, like, here's the radio, and you can tell, here's, like, the flashing blue lights. And I'm like, if I sneak up to them, it'll give me a button to press to, like, disable. No, it doesn't do that. You have to figure out how to disable it, which is very tricky when you're trying to be stealthy, because it's like, this thing needs to be blown up. You can't stealthily blow...
Stealth C4,
right?
I'm sure it's a thing. Yeah, I mean, and that was something I had to make a call. I had access to explosives at that point, and I was like, still like, I don't want them to fucking... If they're calling backup, I already fucked up what I'm trying to do right now. Right. So...
But for me, I assume, well, when I got there and found out you can't just, like, press Y to disable, I was like, well, now I need to blow this up. And I know C4 is in the game, but I didn't have it yet. And the one nice thing about C4 is you can plan it. You don't have to detonate it right away, so you can wait till you're done with your stealthy stuff and then blow it up. But you are going to still put them in an alert state. But at least you're out of the area and not entering, like, active combat. But I didn't have C4. And then last night we were talking, because I didn't even think about it while I was playing. I was just like, oh, well, maybe this is something that later in the game I can come back and do. And we're just sitting here talking about the game, and I'm like, dude, wait. There's mortars in that base. I bet I could use the mortars to blow it up, which again is not stealthy. But I specifically made it a point, because I had gotten the intel and I was making my way to Kaz, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to double back and try to take out those radio dishes. Well, of course, trying to stealthily get to the mortars before I even used them went to hell because I suck at it. So I ended up gunning down everybody in the town, and it tells you, and it's one thing I appreciate but is oddly, like, more friendly than most of that game is it's like, you have taken over this town, so there's no more enemies in it. And at that point I went and I hopped on the mortar, and sure enough, you can blow it up with that. The cooler example of, like, how fluid this game is one of the very, very first things I did when they plop you into Afghanistan. The two towns that you need to explore, extract them from and look for intel and stuff. But there's little outposts along the way. I think they just call them communications points or something, or guard spots. And I'm like, I'm going to check those out, because I thought, well, maybe they have intel, or you can, like, listen in, eavesdrop, and get information or whatever. And so I went to one, and I ended up knocking out the two guards, and I actually did it without killing them. And it says, outpost taken or whatever. And so now I'm, like, going around gathering resources thinking, I'm all full of myself, like, yeah, this was easy. Then I hear a fucking truck pull up and stop, and somebody get out and shout in. He didn't see me at that point, but I look over, and he's looking at this, like, knocked out guard on the ground. And I'm like, well, fuck. Like, I don't know if they can call in, like, on radios or whatever, but you always operate under the assumption that if you don't deal with something like that quickly, it's going to get much, much worse. So I take him out, and I, like, hide the truck, and then at that point I hide the bodies. And then, like, today I was sitting at work, because that's when you think about this game, and I'm like, you know what? If I had hid the bodies initially, and that truck had come through, it was going into town, I guarantee I could have climbed into the back of the truck and hitched a ride and stealthily infiltrated that town without having to sneak in from the outskirts, because that's how this game works. And it's something that you wouldn't even necessarily think about on the fly, because they don't...
I didn't think about that at all. That's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. And there's so many things, I've been avoiding reading in-depth stuff on the game because I don't want to spoil it as we do our spoiler cast. But the little stories that I've read from people are all stuff like that. Like, oh, well, my mission objective, I got to it, but there was no other way out. But I had planted C4 earlier, so I was able to detonate it up, remotely detonate it from the other side of the base, and everybody went running that way, and that opened up an opportunity to sneak out this way. And, like, there's just a billion ways to do things.
Like, I mean, there's there's still like people who are going to try to go for like that perfect like don't ever get caught run. But I like getting caught in the right way, or at least like getting the guards to like kind of notice you and go check shit out. Like that's a very valuable tool.
Mm,
Um, like I've particularly for like in the first mission, like the map is full of these rough diamonds, which are worth a lot of fucking money, and like there's like a point in that first mission where there's just a rough diamond on a table, but it's surrounded by guards. So one of the benefits to having them all go after me was they fucking left that table behind, so I was able to circle around them and grab the fucking
right.
grab the stones, man.
And you're always thinking about stuff like that, and it's one of those rare games that makes me wish I was quicker on my feet with that stuff. Like I said, that truck thing would have been fucking awesome, but I didn't think about it until way after the fact when it was no longer
God,
viable.
well, no, like what happened to me with that truck objective is like you gotta phone the driver back to your base, and like the truck shows up on that first town you go to, and I just sort of saw it there, and I took my time because there was a bunch of guards around it. So I was thinking like, oh, well, I don't know who the driver is yet. He'll probably show up and have a special icon over him. Turns out that game doesn't do this shit at all. You got to figure out who the fuck you're looking for, and that's really hard and also really kind of something I appreciate is like it forces me to really think about who I'm attacking and who I'm trying to subdue without fucking shooting their head off.
Right.
But as I'm like getting ready to approach the truck, the fucker drives off. And then I'm like, oh no. And then I'm like whistling my horse. I'm running after the truck, whistling for my horse, hop on my horse, and I'm like trying to like keep pace with this fucking truck. Like, and I'm just like, I'm completely on the side of the road, just cutting every corner I can to keep up with him because I have no idea where the fuck he's going. And then I find him uh, and then that started the whole fucking commander hunt. Like, getting the driver is not that hard, but finding that piece of shit, goddamn Viet Cong, Soviet Russia piece of fuck. I hate him.
Red Hat guy.
Red Hat. I don't know why I said Viet Cong. He's not from. It's not a Vietnam War, but
No, no.
it sounded funny.
So I've been very impressed with it. I'm looking over my notes to see all the different things I wrote down. I will say it's probably the only game that's ever not bothered me that the first half hour of the game is staring at some guy's butt crack through a hospital gown.
I mean, I was like, this is. I said something on Twitter about how poetic and beautiful that was.
And it's funny because I don't know if it's Kojima, I assume, but they can't just be like coy about it because the whole time you're following this guy and he's crouched over with a thing. So I mean, it's impossible not to notice. You're like, hey, his butt's hanging out. And then after like a half hour of crawling around behind this guy whose butt's hanging out, the camera specifically kind of like focuses on it like twice just to be like, we just want to make sure you're looking at this guy's butt crack.
Understand, we rendered this.
Right. Like
we thought about
under no
this.
circumstance are you to miss this feature in this game.
You think you're watching this for a long time? Imagine our artists.
Right. And I, of course, appreciated the game starting with a rendition of Man Who Sold the World.
Yeah, I love like the finding cassette tapes thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like not going out of my way to find all of them. I don't really care if I can listen to Take On Me or not. But when I do find them, it's cool.
I like how they do it too. Like, if there'll be like a boombox or something nearby, and you can hear the song, so you know it's there. And if you want to try to hunt down and figure out where it's coming from, you can get the cassette. But I thought that was like such a well placed song for that intro. Like it really set up that prologue. And it's funny because the prologue itself, we talked about it. It's amazing and it's batshit crazy, but it's a completely different feel than the actual first mission, which is because you go from this like action escape, flaming guy, like noisy explosion, what the fuck's going on scenario to sneak around a big open desert. So it's like the pace completely shifts.
Yeah, and that's something about Metal Gear, and it's like it's kind of it's cool. It feels like I'm finally in on this like big secret where it's like the whole idea of Metal Gear is take this like expert stealth guy and see if he can like just like see if he can go one on one with superheroes. Yeah, basically like, real fucking crazy supernatural shits at work, but it's no match for fucking CQC. So,
and what's amazing about Big Boss, and I'm sure this holds true through all the Metal Gear games, it's like they do such a good job of making you feel like this, like basically the best mercenary soldier in the world. Like you're just this amazing fucking killing machine, but you're very much not invincible. Like if you get seen and shot like 3 times, you're dead. So, and it's probably a little more than that. I think I in total absorbed like 37 shots or 27 I think it was in the first mission, which is a big negative hit to your mission ranking. But at no point do you feel like you can just like stand up in the middle of base like, hey, I'm Big Boss, I'm gonna kick all your asses. Like you have to do it like a master mercenary.
yeah.
Which has me kind of worried for later in the game because I suck at it, but
Yeah, I'm fucking terrible at this game, but it's a good kind of terrible where, like, I'm fucking yelling at it just as much as I would yell at anything I'm bad at or, like, even a game I, think sucks. But, I'm the first to admit that this is me fucking this whole thing up.
yeah.
Like, this game is really well made, and at least so far, it's, I'm astounded how much I like it.
It's crazy to me how like mentally exhausting just getting through the first mission and stuff was, and then you get out to the main screen and it's like game completion 1%.
Yeah, and that's like,
whoa.
yeah, and yet it's a game that like you said, like I'm thinking about it all day at work, and it's like I just like it's stressful, but goddamn, I want to keep playing it. Like I don't want to do anything else. I want to like figure this out.
And that's what's funny because when I get home and I sit down in front of my computer, because I am playing it on PC, you are too. I'm kind of looking at that icon like I've been waiting all day to play this, but there's almost that little bit of dread. Like
when I turn this on, there's no going back.
Right.
Then it's loaded, and I gotta go.
And
So,
I'll give it to it. It loads pretty well. I mean, for as massive and gorgeous as the game is, the loading screens aren't like 20 minutes long.
I've had a few loading screens where I was like, "Are you okay? Are you dying?"
Nah,
was there a break-in?
Yeah.
Is there a snake in your house?
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, like there was a couple loading screens where I thought it might have like fucked up and froze or something, but also really, and I talked about it on the show yesterday. Like on my computer right now, which doesn't have the best processor, I just overclocked it, and this processor and this motherboard they made overclocking it really easy, but it's running really well. It's one of the snappiest games I have on Steam. Yeah. Like right now, where it's just
way
like
better than that Mega Man crap. I was watching that last night, and that was just like slow down city.
Yeah, well, that's called authenticity.
Yeah,
yeah, that's.
But so I think I've got everything in that I wanted to talk about up to this point in Metal Gear. Anything?
I want to go fucking eat dinner, and I want to just play it until I pass out because I've been up way too long already. So, but we'll be back for episode 2 when we've all played more to talk about. There will be plenty of spoilers to talk about, I'm sure.
Especially with a game like this whose story takes twists and turns like every 5 feet. Like
seriously, like there's gonna be a point where just like. And I'm sure there will be a few where it's just like we'll play a part and immediately go to Twitter to message the other guy. Yeah, like, fuck, dude, we need to talk about this.
I know, and we need some kind of code system to let each other know like where we're at without giving away. Because
I wish we could like I wish we could have like an audio cue to like do the codec sign, like just the codec beep beep, like just like all right.
My initial instinct on this was to run home and mock up a overlay for our spoiler cast that looked like the codex, but I've already seen like a
Yeah,
hundred Twitch channels do that, so I think nah, I'll go a different route.
it's been played out, but
But you
not
know,
a bad idea.
Konami loves to take our money for stupid shit. So I'm surprised there's not like a codex app for your smartphone yet, where we could like directly message each other like over our phone, like beep beep beep.
Yeah, well, then wasn't that what like those long range walkie talkie fucking things with
Yeah, I
boost?
had an old ATT phone that had that push to talk feature. It sucked.
My dad, like my entire dad's side of the family used that for the longest fucking time. And they were really bummed out when like me and my brother were like, we're not doing that.
It's
Fucking
obnoxious.
we're
And
not
I,
even talking not even gonna give you the courtesy of a fucking phone call. Me and my brother both hate using the phone. Like send me a text. Like
and now I'm
or even
picturing.
Skype me. For some reason this is better. But
Well, yeah. And now I'm picturing Snake Boss, cheesy McDoodle pants, whatever the fuck I called him on Twitter today,
yeah,
hiding under that bed like I was just about an hour ago.
from the
Them
phone.
turning around and like starting to walk out of the room and then hearing beep beep beep, like son of a bitch. But
Yeah. That's what's really funny in Metal Gear Solid 3 is the way they set up that codec. It's like a very sort of old school radio. So it goes like bam bam. Yeah, like and it's that loud. And so you're like, oh, why is he the only one who can hear this somehow?
so well, like Ben said, keep an eye on our Twitter accounts.
The Phantom playing.
That way. God, I'm so bad at this, like pointing at my webcam thing. Because we won't have, there's not like a set time or date for these. It'll just be as we're playing through and have more to talk about. But we will do more of these, and you can catch our weekly podcast on Wednesdays live or anytime on YouTube. But
Live.
live is better. It's more authentic.
Yeah. Then you no, then you can't edit the fucking technical difficulties out.
Yeah, like I'm gonna.
That's how you know
anyway.
That's how you know we're legit.